Hello, welcome to more yoga with me, Emily. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope that you are all doing well. As I record this, we're about a week out, a little bit more from Christmas, which for some of you, not a big deal. For others, a very big deal. But it is often, whether or not you celebrate Christmas, it's a time that we get together with other people, usually because we're on holidays of some sort. And we don't get to do that as much this year, right? It's been, um, you know, 9 months or so of not really getting to hang out with lots of people. And that can be super trying. And honestly, even on a normal year, this time of year can be super draining anyway, because you feel like you have to go out and do all of these things. So I really like yoga as a way to reset, right? And it's not about being happy, and it's not about um, being able to, see joy in everything. It's not about that. It's about being able to remain equanimous and even accepting in the face of good or bad. And also, sometimes it's just about making our bodies feel better. So, I don't know about you, but my low back has been really tight lately. So, I thought we would do a whole class about releasing the low back. Often, not always, low back tightness is caused by tight hamstrings, tight hip flexors, and glutes that don't super fire very quickly. So we'll do a little bit of glute activation and a lot of release for the hip flexors and hamstrings and also low back. If you have a block or a couple pillows that you could use today, that would be super, super handy. It'll help lift our pelvis up when we're lying down, and then you can get into supported snail, which is a really, really lovely release for the low back. So go ahead and grab something like that if you can, right? Even a couple pillows, just a little bit of lift. Rolled up towels will really help. And then we're going to use them pretty much right away. So when you lie down, bring your feet to the floor and then grab whatever you're using, whether it's a block or your pillows, and press your feet into the floor to lift the hips and then slide the block underneath the pelvis. So you don't want it under the low back itself, right? Under the pelvis or the bum, and it takes a little bit of adjusting sometimes depending on how high your prop is or just how tight you feel on any given day. And then start to draw your knees toward you. So this is quite a diggy block, so I have to adjust where I put it for myself. But the idea of the lift is that now the knees should hang towards you without you having to use much effort to draw them in. So you can hold on to them if you want to, or you can just allow them to rest. This is a fantastic place. If you have a strap, you can strap your knees together as if you're holding on to them, and then you don't have to use any effort at all, and you don't have to worry about them flying out to the side or anything like that. Anyway, now that we're here, a couple breaths. Inhale through the nose. Exhale, sigh your breath away. Couple more. And continue breathing however you need to, whether it's in and out through your nose or your mouth. Notice how your breath is flowing, whether it feels really open and spacious or perhaps a little bit constricted, potentially even more restricted than normal with the weight of the legs on the belly. And if you hear or feel any clicking or releasing and it's not painful, that can be a really good sign that you're releasing tension in the low back. A few more breaths here. And then slowly start to bring your feet back to the floor. Couple breaths here. And then again, depending on how high this prop is underneath you, you might start to walk your feet away from you or potentially even extend the legs. And it might take a little bit of readjusting. Sometimes this pose, generally called sky bridge, can feel quite intense on the hip flexors. It might feel better with the prop underneath the bum. So just adjust as you need to adjust. Maybe go down to one pillow instead of two. We won't be here for a super long time, but hopefully you're feeling a little bit of release now into the hip flexors without too much tightness now coming into the low back. You might feel this through your abdominals as well. Last couple breaths here. Okay, and then slowly start to bend your knees again. Bring your feet back underneath your knees to the floor. Press into the feet. Lift the hips up. Remove anything out from underneath of you. Come back to a neutral spine. Couple breaths here. Okay, and then start to set up your feet a little bit more thoughtfully. So feet parallel-ish, close enough into your bum that you can tickle your heels with your fingertips. Little loop of the shoulder blades onto the back. You might keep your arms extended rather, or bend the elbows. And then press your heels into the floor. Inhale, start to lift the pelvis up and away. And exhale, lower back down. So a couple of these just flowing in and out of bridge on your own time, on your own breath. And the next time that you lift up, pause there. Maybe you walk onto the outside edge of the shoulders a little bit more, squeeze the bum a little bit more. And in fact, I want you to start to think of drawing your heels toward you. So really firing up hamstrings. Whew, sometimes they'll cramp as you do that. Let's go the opposite direction. Press the feet away from you. Oh, sorry, I had to release a cramp on my leg. Press the feet away from you so you're firing up quads. And then find a little balance between those two activations. And that's where you're going to find the squeeze of the bum, the lift of the hips a little bit more. And we don't always do this while we're in bridge, but I want you to squeeze your butt like crazy. Squeeze, 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 and then slowly lower back down. Take your feet mat width apart, little windshield wiper of the knees. And then draw your knees in toward you. You take a little rock from side to side. And then maybe you start to rock and roll up and down your spine. You can go shoulder blades to sit bones if you want to, or you might roll to one side and then press yourself up. But let's meet on hands and knees. So eventually setting up with knees underneath your hips. Toes can be tucked or untucked. A little draw of your belly button to spine, just slightly. And then as you inhale, lift the tailbone, hollow through the lower back, broaden through the collarbones. And then exhale, round through your spine. Really press the floor away from you. Inhale into cow. Exhale into cat. Now, if you're like me and your low back is feeling a little bit tighter than normal, as you round into cat, start to send your hips back toward your heels a little bit more, and that'll really start to target the low back. You can even wag your tail a little bit from side to side. Otherwise, just move through these cat and cow undulations on your own time, on your own breath, and maybe there's some other natural movement that would feel really great here. If so, go where you need to go. And then gently come back to center. Let's go into child's pose. So you might bring the legs together and sit your hips back, or you might take the knees wide. You'll get a release through the low back in both variations, perhaps more in the variation with the knees together, but you'll also find more compression through the belly. So go where it feels more comfortable for you. Your arms could be totally relaxed. You might stack your fists underneath your forehead to give a little lift. You might bend your elbows. You could wrap your arms around behind you. The last few breaths here. And then slowly bring your hands back to the floor beneath your shoulders. Press yourself back up to hands and knees, little wiggle or shake. And then just step forward to come into a standing forward fold. You could rest your elbows on your knees or thighs. You could bring your hands to blocks if you have them. You could clasp opposite elbows with hands if you want even more traction along the spine. You could be still, you could be moving, just easing into this wherever you need to be. So with your knees bent, you're going to get hamstring release as well as a low back release. If the knees are totally straight, it actually probably is bringing too much tension into the lower back. Make sure the knees don't cave in. Send them out toward the baby toe edges of the feet ever so slightly. And then release your hands with fingertips to your shins or blocks or the earth. Inhale, little partway lift, belly button to spine. Exhale, let it all go. Couple more on your own time, on your own breath. And then bend your knees, head heavy, arms heavy. Slowly start to roll up to standing, one vertebra at a time. Slow as you need to go. till eventually you come all the way up. Maybe a little loop of your shoulders up, back and down, a little wiggle or shake out. And welcome to standing. So we've been doing a lot of single leg glute activation lately, and that's a really fantastic way to activate your glutes. Today, instead, we're going to do squats. Yay! Because not only do they help activate the glutes, right? Because there's really no other way that you can stand up from a squat without using your glutes, but it's also a really, really great position for the low back. So take your feet mat width apart. Turn your toes out slightly. It just depends on how a malasana feels for you. And then when you're ready, exhale, come all the way down into malasana. Now, this might not be where you want to be today, in which case that's fine. Take your feet wider. You can rest your elbows on your knees or thighs. We all have different things going on with our bodies. Perhaps it doesn't feel great on your knees to be in such deep flexion, then you don't have to, right? You can lift the hips up. You could be in, a parallel squat. Anyway, go where you need to go. And then if you're here with me all the way down, think of looping your shoulders onto your back, little draw of belly button to spine. Wherever you are, can you find a little buoyancy? So that if you had to stand up here, you could. And then send the knees out to the baby toe edges of the feet like crazy. Doesn't matter what your squat looks like. Couple more breaths here. Chest open. And then as you exhale, tuck the tailbone under, round through the spine. And then inhale, lift. Exhale, round. And I'll show you from the side. Right? Long spine, rounded spine. But even here, try not to collapse as you round. Right? So we're not just hanging out at the bottom. There's still activity. Last breath. Okay, ready? Charge your legs and then slowly exhale. Come all the way up. Whew. To standing, shake it out a little bit. Obviously, you're going to get quads as well when you do that. Take the feet a little bit wider. You might even want to spin to face the long edge of your mat. Turn your toes out and then exhale. Sit into your wide squat. Again, the knees are really going to want to start shoot forward here. Send them back to the baby toe edges of the feet. And then try not to be super upright. Right? So think of sitting your butt down and back. You can rest your hands right here and even use your hands for support. The idea is to just start to fire up those glutes. And if you're anything like me, you've been here for long enough that you're feeling the strain or the work anyway. Wrap the shoulders onto the back. Last couple of breaths here. And then inhale all the way up to standing. Shake it out a little bit. A little wiggle. A little noodle. Okay. Heel into the feet. Back to hip width. What's another kind of squat? Chair pose. Exhale, hips down and back. Okay, so tailbone down slightly till you feel your belly button engaged toward your spine. Make sure the knees aren't collapsing, right? Even here, send them out to the baby toe edges of the feet. And then inhale your arms to cactus. Okay, so same thing that we did in Malasana. Inhale, lift through the spine. Exhale, round, tuck the tailbone under. And inhale, lift. So probably a little bit more range of movement here than you had in your Malasana. Last breath. And then exhale, release all the way forward. Standing forward fold. Little wiggle or sway. Okay, that's enough glute activation. Inhale, little part way lift. Exhale, fold. Okay, on your inhale, step your right leg back and release your knee to the floor or to a chip foam block or some sort of padding. And then inhale, come on up to your half kneeling. Let's go super active with the hip flexor release today. So back out of the hips, hug the legs toward each other, Really squeeze the bum on the right side, belly button to spine, shoulder blades on the back, maintaining all that. Then start to shift forward. Back toes can be tucked or untucked. Some days feel tighter than others, and that's totally normal. You might gently float the arms up to the sky to find that balance of stability and strength and ease. Really squeeze the bum on that right side. Last couple breaths here. And then exhale, shift your hips back as you extend through the front leg for half splits. Hands could be on hips or on blocks or on the floor. If you have the wall nearby, you could hold on to the wall. Wrap your right hip forward, draw your left hip back, and let's stay pretty upright today rather than coming into a deeper variation of splits. I want you to peel your toes back toward your face and flare them. So you're getting into the calf muscles as well as the hamstrings, right? One of the hamstrings cross the knee to help bend it, but one of your calf muscles also crosses the knee. And then can you imagine that you're dragging your front heel back toward you a little bit more? Last couple breaths. If you want to, think of squeezing the top of the thigh on the front leg to actively open the back of the knee. Notice how you react to moments of intensity. And then slowly back out of it. Step all the way forward again into your standing forward fold. Little wiggle, sway, or bounce. Inhale, little partway lift. Exhale, fold. Charge your legs. Inhale, sweep all the way up to the sky. Exhale, hands to prayer. Shake it out a little bit. And then for a couple breaths, eyes open or closed. Notice whatever you notice. Feel whatever you feel from one side to the other. Right? We did hip flexor on one side, we did hamstrings on the other, so you might be feeling a little bit snaky in terms of the tightnesses and the releases. Okay, one last little squat. I know I said we were done, but this time we're going to do chair pose with the legs together. So big toe mounds touching. There can be a little space between your heels, and then sit the hips down and back. Okay, so tailbone down slightly, belly button to spine, and this time instead of knees going out, think of hugging them toward each other. Use those big inner thigh muscles, right? And that starts to take all the pressure off the tops of the thighs. Tailbone down, so you feel the belly button engaged toward the spine. You don't want that tailbone lifted because that's that shortened position. Arms to cactus. Last couple of breaths here. And then exhale, release, forward fold. Inhale, little partway lift. Exhale, fold. Inhale, step your left leg back. Release your back knee to the floor or chip foam block or any kind of padding that you might want to use. And then inhale, come up to your half kneeling position. Back out of the hips, squeeze the bum, hug the legs toward each other, belly button to spine, shoulder blades on the back. Maintain all that activation and then shift forward. Right, so it's not easy being here in this really active variation of low lunge, but it's really, really great for those hip flexors on the back leg. Your back toes could be tucked or untucked, but really squeeze the bum on that left side. Maybe you gently float your arms up to the sky. You don't have to, particularly if you feel like you're really getting a lot of tension through the shoulders as you do that. Last couple breaths, really squeeze the bum on the back leg. And then exhale, shift your hips back as you extend through the front leg, half splits. Hands go wherever they need to go. And then really actively wrap the left hip forward, draw the right hip back. It's almost as if you're trying to take your right femur and socket it back into your hip socket. Flare the toes on that front foot and then peel them back toward your face a little bit more. You can use your hands here, but for me it doesn't work. Little micro bend on that front knee, staying nice and tall through the spine. Okay, last couple breaths, only if you want to. Think of squeezing the top of the thigh on the front leg. And then slowly and gently release, step back, or forward rather, into your standing forward fold. A little bounce or sway. And then inhale, little partway lift. Exhale, fold. And then gently plant your hands and step back to hands and knees. Little wiggle of the hips from side to side. And then shift the hips to one side so that you can sit down. And then we'll roll all the way down. Hug your knees into your chest and take a little rock from side to side. So one of the best things that we can do for our spine is twisting. So hopefully that will help release the low back a little bit more. Let's take the right arm out to the side. Maybe you shift your hips to the right a little bit to start with. And then as you exhale, lower your knees to the left. And you might have to adjust your way into this twist. You could have your knees stacked. You could take legs crossed. Or a single leg twist. You could bring a block in between your knees or underneath the bottom one. Right, somewhere where you can be in relative ease. You shouldn't have to feel like it's a strain to be here, because you want to be able to release into the space, right? To relax the muscle gripping or tension. You might even look along your right arm just to finish off the spiral in your spine. And then slowly on your inhale, come back to center and reset your spine and your pelvis. You might shift the hips left a little bit and then exhale, lower the knees to the right. So what's the deal with that shift of the hips before twisting? It just makes it easier to stack your hips and get into a deeper twist without having to really reach for it. Ooh, big yawn apparently. You could have your knees stacked or crossed. Go wherever you need to go. If you have any chronic tightness through the pelvis or particularly your SI joint, twisting can often feel really different from one side to the other. So go where you need to go. Last few breaths here. And then slowly on your inhale, come back to center, reset your spine and your pelvis, and then draw your knees toward you. Take them wide toward your shoulders or armpits. You could stay here and maybe take a little rock from side to side. You could kick your feet up to the sky for happy baby. You might grab the backs of the legs, outside of the legs, ankles, or the feet. And this is a really great reset and release for the low back as well. You could rock a little bit from side to side. You could extend one leg or the other. And then think about if there's anything else you feel like you need before your rest. Feel free to go where you need to go. Otherwise, start to wind down and find a pose of rest that'll work for you today, whether it's flat on your back, legs bent or straight. You could rest on your side or in a seated meditation or in child's pose. Wherever you will feel at ease. And then once you've found your pose of rest, for a couple breaths, inhale through your nose. Exhale, sigh, air breath away. Couple more. And then return to your natural breath. With each exhale, let your body release any last gripping or tension. Imagine yourself melting deeper into the earth. And stay here longer if you can, 5 or 10 minutes. Thank you so much for joining me today. Namaste.